Hello, in this video I will be going through the IELTS listening. It'll be a bit shorter because it's the same for the general and academic. I will go through what kind of recordings you can expect and what kind of questions you will see and just the general overall procedure. So if you're interested in the listening, this video will be perfect for you. Well, let's jump in and look at the overview of the IELTS listening. The IELTS listening is the same for both academic and general. You will have 30 minutes to complete the test. Now, for the paper-based, you will have 10 extra minutes to transfer your answers, but you don't have these extra 10 minutes for the computer-based. So that's something to keep in mind, as people do enjoy that extra 10 minutes to transfer their answers because they can make some corrections. During the IELTS listening section, students will listen to 4 recordings. Recordings range in nature from a casual conversation in a social setting to an academic lecture delivered by a professor. There are 10 questions for each recording, meaning the entire section contains 40 questions. These 40 questions fall into 6 categories, which I will explain later. The number of each question type varies, but there is usually an even distribution between the 6 categories. The recordings are heard only once. They include a range of accents, including British, Australian, New Zealand, American, and Canadian. The answers in the recording appear in the same order as on your sheet, so you'll never have to go back and answer a question. That means when you hear the answer for question 2, question 3 will be next in the recording, so you don't have to worry about the order in which you hear them. The band scores are very similar to reading, but they are slightly different. So let's have a look at those now. The first thing you should notice is that you do not have to be perfect to get a band 9. Unlike reading, which you need 40 to get a band 9, for listening you could get between 39 and 40 to reach band 9. So that's kind of good news. And then you can see all the scores there and the range that you would fall in. So of course, it must be a little bit stressful. If you got 30, you get a band 7. But if you get 26, you get 6.5. So there is, kind of levels between them, and there is a range. But when you're doing your practice listening tests, you can see what you are getting for each section. I put the percentages there on the right side. Those are the percentages. So you can see how you're doing for your band score related to the percentage of questions you got correct. Now let's have a look at the sources of the types of recordings you will hear. Recording 1 is a conversation between 2 people set in an everyday social context. By far, the most popular example of this would be someone buying something. Could be at a store, or maybe at a grocery store or a restaurant. Recording 2 is a monologue, which is one person speaking alone, set in an everyday social context. The most popular example would be like a speech about local facilities. Recording 3 is a conversation between up to 4 people set in an educational or training context. A good example of this is a university tutor and a student discussing an assignment. Recording 4 is a monologue again on an academic subject. For example, a university lecture is the most popular thing you will hear for this section. Now let's move on to talk about the 6 different types of questions you may encounter on a listening test. Multiple choice. Candidates will be asked a question and then given several possible responses. They must then select the option that best represents the correct answer. In some cases, more than one answer will be correct, and test takers will need to choose multiple responses. Matching. The question type requires candidates to make connections between different pieces of information. Questions of this nature provide candidates with a set of choices, which must then be paired with items from a numbered list. Map, plan, or diagram labeling. These questions involve graphical representations of the topics being discussed in the recordings. Candidates will be shown an image, such as a map of a city or the diagram of a piece of machinery. Certain elements will be left off the graphic, and candidates must fill them in. In most instances, candidates will be given a list of possible responses and asked to choose the most appropriate one for each blank. Table, form, note, summary, flowchart completion. There are a lot of examples here, so I will go through them one by one. The completion part of the listening requires candidates to finish incomplete outlines related to the recordings. Possible outlines include tables. These will organize the key data in a recording according to well-defined categories, such as time, place, price, etc. Forms. Examiners will be given a form containing details about the recording. For example, they might be giving a shipping agency's quotation form and asked to fill in the dimensions and destination of a package, among other information. Flowcharts. These diagrams show the order in which a process moves from one stage to the next. Notes. These appear in a variety of layouts and require an understanding of how different parts of a recording are linked. For example, test takers might be given a brief outline summarizing an art center's history, amenities, and event schedule, and asked to fill in the blanks. The number of words used to fill in each blank is strictly monitored. The question paper will provide clear directions on how responses should be filled out, including information on word limits, no more than 3 words, only 1 word, etc. Any students whose response exceeds the word limit will be penalized. Sentence completion. Questions in this category are composed of several sentences with important words and phrases omitted. Candidates will need to plug these gaps using content from the recordings. As with the other completion tasks, candidates can only use a certain number of words and will be penalized for writing too much. Short answer. Unlike the previous question types that provide potential answers or text with gaps to fill in, this section requires candidates to create their own responses. Candidates will be asked questions related to the recordings and will need to answer it in their own words. Well, I hope you found that useful. The only way to really understand what these questions are like are by doing real practice tests. Then that way you can see and feel exactly what is expected. So please do that. And I wish you the best of luck on your IELTS test.